Welcome everybody. It's been a heck of a day. HiveOS has been a topic that I've been covering a lot over the last 2 to 3 weeks with their new pricing changes and just the general unreliability I've had with things like Hive Shell, which are imperative to my GPU testing here on YouTube, as well as things like their new pricing tier for free home users that only have 2 rigs, basically not being able to share their farms with me for overclocking help and things like that. So as you know, I think April 1st is actually when I did the video about announcing that I will be moving all of my rigs to mmpos over time. Today, all of HiveOS went down early hours of the morning, and all AMD users lost their overclocks. Most people lost their entire farm list initially. However, most of the rig list, I believe, has come back. NVIDIA users with dashboard OCs have lost those. Auto fan configurations for both Octominer and for GPU are gone. But if you were largely an NVIDIA user that goes 24 hours a day and never shuts off with command line OCs in your flight sheets, you probably didn't notice much of a change. That being said, I'm moving up the timeline. I want to cover exactly how I move a rig from HiveOS to mmpos. So before I really get into it, I'm going to be converting this rig right here, which is 8 P106-100s. It's a very basic rig, but it gets the point across. So I'll be transferring the overclocks, the cards, everything from HiveOS to mmpos. There are referral links for HiveOS and mmpos down in the description. So if you want to get into HiveOS and the restrictions don't matter to you, please feel free to use that. But if not, there is an mmpos referral code as well, which gets you 10% off credit top-ups. And I think it gives me something too, but it's not much. So either way, if you wouldn't mind, I would appreciate it. First step, really, is going to be shutting down the rig. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. Go over to your dashboard, shut down the rig. This rig will keep the overclock states that you have if you're using them in the dashboard. If you have flight sheet overclocks, so in the actual flight sheet, you can go to Edit, Set up Minor Config, and down here, a lot of times when I'm using NVIDIA cards for clients, I will be doing a flight sheet overclock. You may want to take a screenshot of this information too, or just leave it in a separate tab. Again, it's not going anywhere. After that, you're going to want to head over to Google or your favorite search engine like DuckDuckGo and type in Balena Etcher. This software will allow you to essentially write an image from the web, which we'll have to get from mmpos in this case, to an SSD or a flash drive. Although I do not recommend using something like a flash drive. These do work, but they're slow, and they tend to wear out pretty quickly when it comes to read-write cycles. So today I will be using, it's hard to see, an mSATA SSD with an adapter and a cheap USB SATA adapter. I will try to include links to all of the adapters I use to write the actual solid-state media in the description as well. But if I don't, you know what you're looking for. If you're that technically competent where you're starting to contemplate changing operating systems, you're going to know how to do this. So let me install Etcher real quick. I'll open it up, I will screen cap it, and I'll show you exactly what we're going to be doing. Okay, so you can see on screen right here, I've got Etcher. I'm going to move that out of my way, but it should stay on the screen prominently for you. All you have to do next is go into your mmpos. Again, there will be a link down below for how you actually get in here, sign up for it. Your farm will look just like this, but with no rigs. Once you're in here, and if you have any questions, just get at me in the Metered Mining Discord, but once you're in here, you go up to the top bar and you hit Get MMPOS. What we're going to be doing at that point is downloading MMPOS, and that will immediately start downloading, in this case, a 708 megabyte image to your desktop. You will be flashing this over to your SSD or your USB drive directly, and in the meantime, on this same page, you'll see 4 options at the top. We'll also want to get AutoConf. What this file does is it will automatically, once you put it on the SSD after you've flashed it, it will automatically talk to the operating system as it boots up. And if it doesn't detect any rig information, it will reach out to mmpos' API server, it will find your farm, it will automatically create a new rig with a rig ID that is essentially the MAC address for the motherboard, and it will add the rig automatically. So in the case of HiveOS burning, it's a little different, because you still use Etcher, you still write the image, but in order to actually get the rig to load up first time, you have to create the rig in the dashboard, then you have to download the rig.conf file for each rig, and I know you guys have probably run into this too, but if you've done more than one rig, your downloads folder tends to get completely clogged full of these rig.conf files, and Windows will append a parenthesis 1 at the end, which doesn't work. So a little bit of a pain in the butt, and I really like how mmpos handles this, because you can use this one AutoConf file for every single rig you add to your mmpos account. In addition to that, if you go to NetConf, you can actually change this from Ethernet to Wi-Fi, and you can key in your Wi-Fi information ahead of time. I do typically do this and put it on the boot drive even if I'm not going to use Wi-Fi on that rig, because it will just sit there dormant, and in the case of an outage or you're running dual NICs, at least it will be there and the rig will automatically know to fail over to your Wi-Fi if there's a problem with the Ethernet. So go ahead and download NetConf if you feel like you're going to need it, but yes, I would absolutely leave everything as default here. You can change it once you get it into the OS, but just generate and download, and you'll see that file come down right on top. So as soon as this is done downloading, I will get back into Etcher and we will take a look at burning this image. Alright, now that we have the file downloaded, we're going to come back to Etcher. We're going to hit Flash from File, go to MMP Latest, select Target. You can see here I've loaded my mSATA SSD into my USB to mSATA to SATA adapter. You can also do this with a SATA SSD, a hard drive, again, a flash drive. Anything you plug into your computer should automatically show up here. Now we're going to go ahead and hit Flash. Windows will prompt you just asking for administrator permissions to write to the device. We'll go ahead and flash it. Okay. We can see the flash is completed. Typically I will come down to the tray, look for the USB, and I will actually eject the USB drive. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I like to play it safe when I've just flashed a solid state. Pull it right out of the writer, and we can see the drive right here. So now I'm going to go throw this into the rig, and I will do nothing else other than turn the rig back on, and we will wait. And this should show right up. One thing I forgot to record, and I actually talked about it later, but I'm going to come back and record this because it's important. In here, you have your AutoConf file. Control-C, and once this pops up, you're looking for a really small volume, like 20 megabytes. You just want to paste this in there, and that's all you got to do. Safe eject your device, and go plug this thing into your rig. So after putting that AutoConf on the drive, reloading it, throwing it in the rig, and turning it on. That's literally all we've done. And I should have covered the AutoConf bit. I'm sorry I didn't. But basically, when you plug the SSD back into the adapter, Windows will bring up an empty volume. All you do is drag and drop that text file into it, safe eject again, then throw the SSD in the machine, then turn it on. But you can see here, we've got a rig, and we've got 8 P106-100s in it. All we have to do now is basically reapply the OCs and then make sure we've got a miner profile that's compatible. So in the event that you don't have an mmpos account at all, what you would do first is come over to Wallets, hit Add Wallet, and since we were mining Dynex before here on HiveOS, we would go in and type in Dynex Wallet, come down to Coin, Dynex, and it'll automatically populate. They're very good about keeping this up to date, so you very rarely have to add anything that isn't in there. Then you can come into HiveOS in your flight sheet, copy your address, paste it in, and create wallet. Since I already have this in here, I'm not going to hit create, but you would. After that, we'll come over to pools, which is the next thing you have to do. And in this case, we would come up to add pool. We would do Dynex Deep Miners, and that's the pool we were currently using on HiveOS. Again, we'll go over to Coin so it knows exactly what it's doing. And this is one downside to mmpos. It doesn't have automatically populated pools for you to make it easy. However, it's quite easy if you're migrating. So your primary pool here is pool.us.deepminers.com:4444. I usually copy the entire string over from HiveOS, and I paste it in hostname, but I get rid of the port and the colon because that's down here. In most cases, your default pools on HiveOS are not using TLS or SSL, but you can always come in here and check. So if this SSL URLs is unchecked, then you would not use SSL or TLS. However, if you have this enabled, you would indeed check this with the different port that you're on there. You can also go to your mining pool, and they will have a connect button usually, or get started, and that will tell you whether or not it's TLS. So after all that's confirmed, go ahead and hit create pool. Again, I already have this created, so I'm not going to. And then we'll come over to miner profiles. This is the last step we really have to do before we can assign it to the rig and get mining with some overclocks. So again, assuming you don't have any of this stuff, add profile. We'll do Dynex P106 10 miner, deep miners. I've found, since mmpos is a little bit different in how it handles miner profiles versus flight sheets, and I do have some mixed rigs, I will actually make specific miner profiles for rigs sometimes, and in this case, I'm actually going to make this profile because I do want it to be different than my main Dynex profile in case I have command line OCs in there, or in case I want to put command line OCs in here, which I very well may do because 10 miner does support that. Alright, then we'll come down to coin and we'll once again select Dynex. It's automatically going to pull up the miners that we can use. Since we're NVIDIA, we're going to go ahead and use 10 miner. BZ miner will work, but I don't typically do that. It has automatically selected the most relevant pool for us, which is deep miners, and we can dial back the older versions of the miner as well, but again, mmpos is very good about keeping this up to date, so I trust that this will actually be perfect. Under advanced, this is where you would be putting in the extra arguments if you wanted to command line overclock. So if I come back to Hive here, you can see these arguments right here would get pasted after API port here with a space. I don't have any command line OCs in here, but in the interest of, let's see, let me look over to my overclocks here. Let me bring my sheet over so you guys can take a look with me. Let's find the P106. And I was running a dashboard OC, so I will show you how to do that as well. But in the case of Dynex, it looks like 1800, 4000 plus 1000. That's as good as we could do. So in that case, we're actually going to be better off using the dashboard in mmpos. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit create profile. We don't need anything special in there. Coming back over to rigs, we have this up at the top. First thing I want to do is rename it. So hit the gear icon, and we will call this AXP106. But since I want this at the bottom of my list, it's kind of an old rig, I will do Y underscore because it will sort alphabetically. I'm going to go ahead and hit update. We can see that the name already updated. And what I'm going to do for overclocks. So again, we'll come back over to Hive. You can see I was running 1350, 400, but it looks like our best result was not using those OCs. Or was it? Okay, maybe it was. Yes, never mind. We are going to go ahead and use those OCs. Apparently I keyed those in and I meant it. So we're going to come up to card number 0, card number 1. We're going to enable overclocking on this card. I don't know why it's off by default, but it is. We're going to come in here and we are going to key in a locked core frequency of 1350. And we're going to do a memory clock offset of 400. So that's going to take the maximum default clock on these cards is 4000 megahertz to start with. You can lock it and then also add memory clock offset in dashboard on mmpos. So this kind of eliminates the need to use CLI overclocks almost always. You can still do it, but I haven't found a reason to do it. And we could just hit apply here, but what I'm going to do is two things. I'm going to save it as a profile, which up here, this little floppy disk icon, as a new preset. We'll do P106 100 Dynex, add it as a preset, and we will apply. So now you can see in light gray here, there are some numbers, which means we've applied an overclock to that card, but we haven't applied it to the whole rig yet. Card number 2, what I'm going to do, just to show you, is enable the overclock, come into the folder for load preset, and we can see right at the top, P106 Dynex. We're going to hit the... Oh, it says it's not compatible. What the heck? Oh, maybe we have to apply it first. Let me save the OC changes, come back in. That might be why, because we definitely have the same cards. Guys, that should work. You should be able to hit the folder icon and it will load. The only... Oh, it's because we have different memory. That's my... Okay, let's try it on the Samsung then. Typically this will work out of the box, but let's go to another Samsung. And yep, see, it's automatically identified. We have another identical card. So it'll look for memory type because it knows. I mean, if imagine applying a Samsung 3060 Ti overclock to a Hynix Rev 2, bad idea. So we can go ahead and hit apply preset. It's automatically going to do that. We can either hit apply it to this card, or what I'm going to try here is apply similar. What that would have done had we done this on GPU 0 is apply it automatically to both of the Samsung cards. Now that we've done that, we have to come in here. We'll do the same thing for the Micron cards. So we'll come in, we'll type in 1350 megahertz for a lock, and we are doing a 400 megahertz offset on the memory. And I'm going to go ahead and do apply similar. It says, wow, we found 6 similar GPUs, all the Micron P106s. Yes. Now you can see in gray that they're pending, but you always have to hit save OC changes on the rig once you're done. I'm going to open a remote console session. This button right here is essentially the same as Hive Shell, and if you want to open it off screen, you have to hold the command or control button on your keyboard while you open it. Over here you can see that the remote TTY shell is opening. I will say, it always works, but occasionally it takes a couple of tries, so that might take a second for us to load up. In the meantime, let's apply the Dynex flight sheet or miner profile to this rig by going up to the pickaxe, and we can search by Dynex, which, let's see how well I can identify their logo, and we see here Dynex P10610 miner deep miners, and we'll hit switch. Now this will automatically start downloading all the assets we need. It will load the miners, it will push through the API, exactly what we did for Overclocks, into the driver, and it will start mining. So on the dashboard here, once we actually have hash rate, this will populate with a lot more data. It will give you temperature data, it will give you hash rate data, accepted shares, rejected shares over time. The data analytics are actually really quite good. So let me give this a few minutes. You can see it's already popping up here, but let me, and if you have a default login, which I did here for demo reasons, the default login is miner, all lowercase, M-I-N-E-R, enter, and then MMP, lowercase, OS capitals, so mmpos, but with the last two capitalized, enter, and then say you want to just take a look at your miner like you would in HiveOS, it's the same thing, so miner, enter. This is going to look a little bit different than Hive Shell, but only for one reason, and that is because you can see it's separated in a few different ways, and the bottommost screen is going to have an aggregated display of all of your miners that are running. So this is 1.0 miner. This is the API information coming back and forth between the rig, including all OC changes, so you can audit them and make sure they apply. And then the top portion, which I'm now obscuring, will show you all of the current GPU information, including fan speed, software power, current clocks, so you can make sure that they're doing what they actually are supposed to be doing. And of course, down here we already have hash rate, which is fantastic. If this doesn't update fast enough for you, the only current option, and I'm working on this with the developer, but the only current option is to actually just reload the entire web page. There's no soft refresh button in the web GUI like there is in HiveOS, unfortunately. I have told them it would be nice, especially for overclocking when you really do need a fast response, but I've found that just opening up a remote console session and taking a look at the bottom screen here is just as good, so I haven't found that to be a problem at all. Anyway, be that as it may, while this comes up on the dashboard, that is essentially the entire process of getting a rig transferred over from Hive into mmpos. Obviously, there's more nuance to that, but everything is pretty much the same in how it functions. It's just in a different spot. So when I moved, I don't know about you guys, but when I moved from Windows mining, nice hash quick miner, over to HiveOS, it was a leap of faith. I mean, I really had to struggle to like, wow, whoa, what's this farm? What's a worker? I didn't know anything about scheduling. I didn't know anything about tags. I mean, I made a mess of HiveOS when I first started into it. In fact, I think I did a video setting up a 7x3070 Ti rig back then, right when I was getting into it. And I got you through it, but it really wasn't a great video now that I know what I know after using Hive so much to become a power user. So I will say for AMD, mmpos is just better. For BC250, it's better. For NVIDIA, the only thing I really prefer on mmpos for NVIDIA is the ability in dashboard to set a locked core clock and a core clock offset at the same time without touching the flight sheet, in the case of, say, a CMP50HX mining Dynex. 10 miner and BZ miner will not lock the memory on a CMP50HX, but LOL miner will. LOL miner doesn't support Dynex. So I end up having to run what I call a ghost sheet, which I learned about from a local friend, which is basically you run LOL miner 1.76, and you just tell it the wrong pool and the wrong algorithm on top, and it just sets the clocks for you. In mmpos, you never need to use a ghost sheet because the actual dashboard sets your overclocks. It's very, very reliable. It works just as well on NVIDIA as it does on AMD. However, gripes. I do have some gripes with mmpos. I mentioned earlier the console is very slow to load. It does always load, which it does not on Hive, but sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times of actually getting into it, having it timeout, fail, closing the session, and getting back into it. I don't love that. There's no software scheduling built into this yet. Again, it's a feature I'm working on with them, so that's why I have a lot of GPUs on HiveOS still. There is a very good scheduling feature built into HiveOS. If you come into your farm, you can tag a rig and you can actually do a schedule. All of these got wiped out by HiveOS today and their infinite wisdom, so I had to re-add this, but my most common thing every day, 9 a.m., my rig will send a command all the way down to the BIOS level of the rig, and it will tell the computer basically to shut down, count to 43,200 seconds, and turn back on. That's a feature that's enabled in pretty much all Octaminers and a lot of open-air rig motherboards, but not on cheaper mining cases. So I need that to carry over into mmpos. However, I think that's the last big feature I really need on this OS before I can get everything migrated over. And you can see, I mean, I'm not picking favorites here. I really don't like Hive's current path. I really don't like a lot of things about what they've done. I don't like this crash and how they responded to it. But I mean, you can see here, I mean, I've got 39,000 credits in here. I've got $650 in Hive. Like, I'm not going anywhere off either one of these platforms. But I do want you guys to know that mmpos is completely viable, and it does a lot of things better. And if you really value stability over all else, especially if you're running a rig 24 hours a day and you don't need to software schedule it, give it a look. I've been using it more and more over the last 6+ months, and it's pretty good. So anyway, something to consider, especially today, since we've had so many issues with HiveOS. But we now have this rig running completely stably. We're going to start getting some nice metrics here. But yeah, that's mmpos migrating from Hive. Thanks for watching.